She walked out of a high conflict divorce in her mid-30s and then married a widower with 4 kids. And overnight, she was helping raise a blended family of 8. Nearly 20 years ago, my guest is a CDA certified divorce coach, a co-parenting specialist, a trauma-informed and coercive control coach, and the founder of Step It Up with Lyerly. She doesn't just teach women how to prepare for mediation. She teaches them how to stop spiraling, manage the emotions, and negotiate settlements that actually hold. Because she knows what happens when you don't. This is the conversation for anyone who needs to walk into the mediation room like they belong. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Divorcing Strong podcast. I'm Becky Sampson, your host, and today is exciting. Every single episode that I come into contact, and you can see that I'm kind of more relaxed now. I don't go full blown into the studio. I like to sit here, and I just realized recently that I love conversations that are organic and authentic, and that's really what I strive to do with this Divorcing Strong, because I get calls every single day of people going through divorce that need information and need resources and are in this place, unfortunately, and by the way, I totally get it, that are frantic, like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And like, how do I stop this from happening? And how do I get through this without falling to pieces, I should say. And I just want you to know that this too shall pass. Like, if you're going through a divorce, or if you know someone that's going through a divorce, this is so important that you just get educated. I say it so many times on this show, but I'd say education, knowledge is power. And the more you know, the more resources that you see that are out there. And I guarantee you, I am in all those circles of the people that have such big hearts that want to be able to give back and serve you in this time of your life, that you are not alone. I also want to remind people, if you are just starting the process or in the process of divorce, I do have a free download right here. It is 100 divorce terms. This is all to educate you, helping you understand and navigate the language, the legal language of divorce. Because whether you're working with an attorney or not, it's so important that you understand these things so that you understand what your rights are. As I always say, when you don't know your rights going through divorce, you have no rights. And I hate to say that, but it is very, very true, because it's just a different beast. And we want to get you through as quickly as possible. And so the same thing with our guest today. I'm excited to have this conversation because she has a vast experience to be able to share with you not only what works for her in blending her family, but also with what she does with high conflict and coercive control, because that just seems to be the buzzword these days. And courts are starting to recognize it a little bit more. So I want to tell you about Lyerly Spongberg. Has a coaching resume that covers almost every corner of the divorce process. ADR, we're going to talk about that and what that is, the pre-mediation, co-parenting, trauma-informed practice, coercive control. But the thing that sets her apart isn't all of her certifications. It's the fact that she walked through the high conflict divorce herself and then chose to marry a widower with 4 kids. They built a blended family of 8, and nearly 20 years later, she's still in it. When she talks about co-parenting through conflict, she knows what it sounds like at the dinner table. And when she preps a client for mediation, she remembers what it felt like to sit in that chair. So Step It Up with Lyerly. Lyerly is her national practice, and it exists to give women what she wishes she had, a coach who could teach them how to stay steady when everything is falling apart. So welcome to the show. How are
Thanks so much
you?
for having me, Becky. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm sure you get that all the time. Your name,
I
Lyerly.
do. I have clients that call me SpongeBob, SquarePants. It's
Oh,
fun. It's always a conversation starter. So
I know. I used to be a property manager over an apartment complex for 6.5 years, and I saw all the different names. And I was always one of those people that I'm like, I just want to make sure I get it right.
I was never the kid that had like I could never find my name on the little license plate for your bike. I never got the pencil or anything. So
Oh my goodness, that's true. Because yeah, well, there you go. You're that unique. I love
there
it.
you go. Yep, one name.
So kind of before we dive into all of the experience that and what you do for your clients, I love to start off the show off with like kind of tell us the backstory as much as you're comfortable in telling the backstory and what got you into this industry and what makes you passionate about serving the people that you serve.
Sure. I mean, I think you covered it a little bit. I was married in my early 20s,
Mhm.
and I had two children by the time I was 30.
Mm.
And not long after that, a few years after, I think my children were 2 and 4, and I had this sort of cliche moment of walking, I think, past a mirror and wondering who I had become and where the person
Mm.
was that I liked about myself. And I realized this was a long time ago. So there was not a lot of education around different kinds of personalities and emotional
Right.
needs. And so the conversation, there was really no one to have a conversation with about sort of what I was experiencing.
Mhm.
And it was very isolating and very lonely, and it made me very scared, especially with two young children. So having survived that and gotten through it, and now very happily married, as you said, almost 20 years. I came to this work because I really wanted to make it better for people, in a way that I didn't have support, that I didn't have, that would have been so crucial and so important. And the preparation, as you said, knowledge, I always say, knowledge is the antidote to fear.
Yeah.
And this is such a scary process. So I come about it from personal experience, wanting to, as I say, find the intersection between what I love, what the world needs, and what I'm good at. So that's what led
Yeah.
me
Well, that's called passion to profit.
here.
Right? Like you really and I actually do a different podcast. It's called Passion to Payday. And it's literally about finding something that you're passionate about. And I love hearing the backstory because that shows people that you understand. I mean, not everybody in this field has been through
Mhm.
crazy things, but most people have. So I love that you've been able to make this your career is to be able to help women and you help men as well. Is that
I do.
correct?
Yes. Yep. I have both male and female clients.
Yeah, because I think that's really important. The people, we do talk a lot about women and women's support on this podcast, but
Mhm.
I am absolutely in support of men as well because it does happen to men. And we talked a little bit about that before we started this podcast. Is we know people in our own personal life that they've been through difficult divorces as well. So I love that we're going to be talking about a lot of different topics. But let's like start off with like the high during your own high conflict divorce, and what cost you, what was difficult, maybe I should say, let's just say in general,
Mhm.
when it comes to your clients that you're working with that are dealing with high conflict, what are some of the mistakes that they make? And what are the things that have made all the difference in them coming through it a lot stronger?
That's a great question. I think the high conflict piece, number one, it makes the advice or the things that you're told from other people kind of irrelevant. And sometimes I think people love to share their own personal
Yeah.
stories. People love to give advice. It's very important also to know who to listen to, what not to listen to.
Yep.
Uh, but it can feel more isolating and more difficult, and that you're doing something wrong, I think, if you're trying to compare it, or to what you're hearing. So I think there's fear. There's a lot of fear about power imbalances, about if there's financial control, a lack of understanding or knowledge, or that something could be either hidden from you or stolen from you, or that you're being deceived in some ways, that if you come to realize that there's control or manipulation, How do you stop that? There's a lot of shame often that comes with that too, is like this idea that how did I let this happen to myself?
Yeah.
So in addition to all these emotions that are swirling around, you're having to make enormous decisions about your future. And that's where a lot of the work that I do comes in, is how do we talk about the emotions and feel them and listen to them, and also create the capacity to make these big decisions from a sound mind and not an over, dysregulated one.
Yeah. And what is some of the advice that you would give to that? Because I know we were talking before, and we'll kind of get into this about mediation, because that's one of the things is that you had mentioned that mediation can be a very stressful time for someone. And how do you ground them? I like the word grounding. How do you get them emotionally regulated before they go into that high conflict, or it can be a high conflict situation? I shouldn't say high conflict, but it's stressful.
Scary. It's scary. I mean, it's scary and it's overwhelming. And again, back to the idea that, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
There are a lot of ways to prepare for mediation and education. From my ideal client is someone who is just either, maybe they haven't even had the divorce conversation and they don't really know what they're doing yet. And they haven't hired a big attorney and paid a lot of money yet to do, to create that, what they think they should do based on movies or what someone told them. So if someone comes in at the beginning, then we can really walk through all the pieces of a marital settlement agreement. We can walk through what financial disclosure looks like. We can, my first question is typically, what are you most afraid of? And that's a really powerful question, to drill down, because it can be, I'm afraid of not seeing my children all the time. I can be afraid because he's always been he's more charming and he's manipulative, and I don't know how I'm going to be able to show up. It can be that they're terrified of losing their home. So if we can really start from the very, very beginning and start to identify these fears, help come up with answers, at least beginnings of answers to those. Does that mean you need to speak to whatever specialist that is before you even start the divorce process? So getting all those ducks in a row, if you will, of education around the process. This is what mediation looks like. These are the goals of mediation. This is what a mediator is and isn't, can and cannot do. This is who your support team can be. We do reality testing when it comes to, okay, so you're in that room, you're at the table, and he or she says that thing, that the thing that gets you unhinged, the things that where your chest gets tight, and how do you sit in that? So we work on distress tolerance. We work on nonviolent communication. We role play sometimes, so your brain is amazing. Your brain, if you can, visualize what it's like to be there and do it successfully and keep your cool and your calm, you can teach your brain in a way, you can kind of trick it to know that it can do it. Does that make sense?
Yep. There's actually, when I was going through my peace building degree, I was actually in a peace building linguistics class, so they taught us how to communicate in a more peaceful way. And part of that, we had to write a poem, and my poem was called Power of the Pause.
Yes.
Because when you're in a really highly stressful situation, and even with court, they don't realize that they can just pause for just a second, to think before they respond, because it is difficult to, once you say something, to take it back, right?
It is. And I couldn't agree with you more. Pausing is one of the most important tools to learn. And that is how it is the key to staying regulated, is the key to delivering the message you want to deliver. So a lot of the work I do is exactly that. How do you create space between the trigger or the immediacy of something you think you need to respond to? And how do you create space that you can respond and not react, so that you can stay grounded? And who do you want to be? I mean, there's a lot of things that I work on, in mediation. Who do you want to be at the end? So you can ground yourself in the vision of that, and as a parent, as a, co-parent, et cetera.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I mean, so you've got lots of certifications and things like that, but in pre-mediation, in preparing for that, what actually happens in the weeks before they sit down at the table? And what are some of the advice that you'd give them in prepping for that?
Like I said, it's very much an understanding of this is how this is going to work. depending on that person's needs or fears. Who do you need on your team? Do you need a CDFA? Do you need a forensic accountant? Do you need someone to assess the home, value of your home? What questions do you need answered? Let's talk about a parenting plan. What are the most important things to you? I also talk a lot about what you need versus what you want. Like, what is worth fighting for? What is not worth fighting for? And if we can do all this prep work in the beginning, so they understand the aspects of a marital settlement agreement, which are peace, which is parenting plan, equitable distribution, alimony / spouse support, whatever you want to call it, child support, and everything else. So if they know that these are all the things that they need to decide and prepare for, then they're not as frightening.
Right.
And I share what a parenting plan, what all the pieces of that look like. What does financial disclosure look like? What does, and then we dive into values. We dive into, what are your values? Who do you want to be through this? How do you want to set the tone for this? What are your anticipated triggers and roadblocks here? What do you think is going to be the most important to them? And how do we work on it?
Do you attend mediation with them, or you just them? Okay. Yeah. And I was going to say too, is what would you say to someone that is dealing with high conflict and is not feeling quite ready for mediation? Like, they don't have all the information.
It's tricky. I mean, I think, all the information typically means all the financial information.
Exactly.
That's really where that hunt, comes up. I have a client right now who doesn't have any idea about, any accounts, even where they're held. And that's a scary place to be. And your work, in terms of subpoenaing, like, how do you get information in mediation where the theory is that you are trustworthy and open and providing everything willingly, and it's a voluntary. So if that's a big fear, I think we mentioned this before we start recording. Mediation has 3 outcomes. The first is that you reach a marital settlement agreement and it gets filed and you're done. The second is that you reach a partial agreement, and maybe it's everything, but you need to file a motion for full disclosure of assets. And that needs to be a different piece of that. Maybe you don't reach a decision at all because the dynamics are too high conflict. That actually happened to me. Had to walk out of mediation, didn't work. So, but that's huge information. If mediation fails, a lot about what you're up against.
Yeah, and when you mentioned that earlier, I thought, okay, make sure you take a notebook in there, because your brain is like scrambled. And it's important to write down those things that are important, because you'll not only get what's important to them, because the mediators really, I'm a trained mediator. I got trained when I was going through my second divorce, litigating my own case. And I learned that, it's their job to be neutral. I think often I made the mistakes, even when I was being trained as a mediator. I was thinking, oh, she's going to think she's going to be on my side and all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, that's their job, is to be neutral and to be able to help bring you to a neutral, agreement. But I had the same thing that you did, is that it, $3,500 later, there was nothing resolved, because there was no financials given. And even the mediator, I'm like, what do we mediate if I don't have all the information?
Yeah, you can't. I mean, maybe you can come up with a parenting plan. Maybe you can agree on that. Yeah. I mean, of course, whatever you can do in that environment, cooperatively and calmly, hopefully, is great. And there has to be some acceptance sometimes of what you can and can't. And a big thing of what I work on is creating levels of I call it the chaos filter, and that is 3 levels. Number 1 is what is completely out of my control. There's a lot of things: how someone acts, what somebody does, the law. Zone 2 is what can I influence? How I act? What can I do in terms of how I act, or how I, what I say, how I interact with people, or how prepared I am can influence the outcome. And zone 3 would be what's it within my control. And most of the time, especially in high conflict, people are spending 80%, if not more, of their energy in zone 1, where they have 0 control. And sometimes just being able to help someone understand that, like, that's a lot of what that spiraling is that your brain trying to solve a problem that's unsolvable because there's no there's no person to help you solve the problem. They're not going to change, or that you can't control the outcome. You can't know the answer, and your brain is looking to close that loop. And maybe if you recognize the loop is not closable, then you can focus your energy somewhere else.
I love that. Is that something that you have them actually write down and actually write those 3 columns down?
It is an exercise that I do. And I mean, you can certainly, writing it down is helpful. You can even think about it because you can kind of in your brain, like the Harry Potter sorting hat, right? You can sort all these things, right? So sort it into that. And very quickly, people realize where they're spending their energy.
Yeah, I would think that would be a very good exercise, because if you're going into a mediation, I mean, it's important to know also one thing that I didn't hear you say was what you're willing to settle for financially, right? And knowing that number before you go in and knowing where your range is. And again, mediation, this is the beautiful thing about mediation. It's a voluntary thing that you don't have to make a decision that if you're not comfortable.
No,
right?
It's perfectly fine to say, I need to think about it. And thank you for reminding me of that, because that is a big piece of what we do too, is in the preparation. I sort of ideally, a client comes to me, they understand the process. We talk about their biggest fears, who they want to be on the other side. We get grounded in that. If children are in the mix, then that is going to be the central piece of everything, all the decisions that are made. And then if they're able to have a good understanding of their finances and the assets that they have as a couple, then we can start to figure out tiered proposals. And that's work that we can do. We can go, most states have calculators for child support. Those, there's formulas for a lot of these things. So you can get basic information. And then what I like to tell my clients is that you're each going to get a box of Legos. They're the same number and shape of Legos. And build a different tower. And in the beauty of mediation is that you can build different towers. If you stand in front of a judge, they'll say, split it 50-50, sell this, do that. But in mediation, you can agree to whatever you want to agree to. And that's the beauty of mediation, is you have actually far more control over the outcome than if you litigate. So what do you want your Lego tower to look like? And how do we build it so it works for you? Knowing that you're not going to get everything that you want, but what do you need? What do you need to be okay?
Right.
And there's a real difference between fighting for what you want and having a position around something and understanding, why you want it. That's another big piece.
How much time do you spend and dedicate, or do you dedicate any time to really evaluating what's important to the other party? Because I think when it comes to negotiations, it's understanding where that lever is, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, a great example, I have a client, he had a boat, and which is really, really important to him. Right. So how do we, strategically use that desire of his, and what do you trade it for? The definition of negotiation is giving up something you want for something you want more. So what do you want more than sell the boat and split the proceeds? So, and what does that do to the goodwill and of the negotiation? So things like that, absolutely identifying what's important within that, and to the other person. That is a big piece of the work.
Yeah. And I think a lot more courts, are you finding that a lot more courts are kind of mandating mediation?
Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of want to take it and go handle it and come back and let me know when you get it handled.
Yeah, I think so. And they're also, unfortunately too, I think there are people that also will just go and check a box and not actually be dedicated to mediation. Yep.
You have to be open.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, people also think if it's really high conflict that mediation is not an option, but there's something incredibly powerful about doing the work that I do with someone and preparing them emotionally, how they're going to deal with feeling the dysregulation, how they're going to stay grounded. And when they show up as a different person, it can totally change the dynamic. Because in a high conflict relationship, typically there's one person that does have more control and is more manipulative and is intimidating. And if someone can be built up enough, just enough, doesn't have to be, they don't have to go crazy, but enough to stand in their own truth and their own values and what they want confidently, they can be terrified. They can run out of the room and scream and yell and throw up if they need to. But if they can sit there in that discomfort and show up for themselves in a different way, it can totally change the dynamic of the process.
I love that you brought that up, because some people feel like very powerless in those kind of situations. And I know in my situation, one little gesture of kindness really did shift a lot of things. But that started with me making a choice. And so, yes, definitely can influence that. I know you married. So after you had gone through your situation, you ended up marrying a guy with 4 kids. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, tell us about that. And like, I don't have any children. I wasn't able to have any children, so I didn't have to do the whole blending family thing. But I do see how hard and difficult that can be. And how did you do it?
Well, I think I met a man who very, very tragically lost his wife in a car accident, and his children were, I think the youngest was 5 and the oldest was 15 when it happened.
Wow.
And so I went from having 2 elementary school daughters to having teenagers, which was a very, very eye-opening experience. I actually had been a camp counselor when I was younger. I always sort of envisioned having a lot of children.
So that's actually why you and I are both artsy fartsy people, you know, because
right.
I grew up at a summer camp for kids. We ran a camp for 46 years, my family. Wow. And so it's like, yep, there you go. You're perfect. You were made for this.
Yeah. I think I just, my husband and I, very early on, we were dating. I mean, dating with 6 children is no easy task, and not for the faint of heart. I mean, there's virtually no time alone. And so you really early on have to decide if you're all in or not, because kids get attached, and that the last thing you want to do in that time period, especially if you're leaving a marriage and going into another relationship, is make it any harder on the kids.
Right. Exactly.
And so we really were very conscious about saying these were our 6 kids and that we were doing this together, and did our best to keep them from dividing us. And, but it's very hard. Blood is its own thing. And all of our children had experienced their own trauma, their own losses. So we had to be very, very attuned to that. And I say it's like putting an octopus in a mesh bag. There's just always, some arm falls out somewhere. There's something that probably feels like it gets, undone on any given day. I think we just went in with really full hearts, and that's how we managed it.
I know you mentioned before we started the show that it really has been one of the things that has helped you be successful in blending that family was just your dedication. You guys are like all in.
Yeah.
Right. You're like, that's it. We're doing this.
Yeah, we're doing it. And we, it was very hard. I won't sugarcoat it at all. There are moments which were hard. I feel like I did some things really well, and I did some things not so well. And I think because there's no handbook, there's no roadmap. You kind of have to just be willing to make mistakes, be willing to say you're sorry, and realize that everyone is going through like truly a blender. I mean, it's like you got to throw all these people in there, and personalities, and birth orders, and now the birth orders changed, and it's also incredibly, incredibly rewarding. I adore my family, and I think I mentioned to you my 4th grandchild is actually due today, or was due last week.
Now she's
arriving soon. So
arriving soon. I know, and being a grandparent. So how old's your youngest now?
27.
27. Okay. So, I mean, this is the thing is we talk about, what happened 20 years ago, but yeah, a lot of people face the whole blended family. Any advice that you would give someone? First of all, how long had it been since their mother had passed away when you came into the picture?
A couple years.
So any advice that you'd have for someone that might find themselves in the same situation, or maybe even just dating, how to blend those families together in a healthy way? Like, what were some things that you did do that worked really well?
I think it's very important to be humble about it, and not try to, can't force anything. You have to be really authentic, and be open to making mistakes, and understanding that this is a learning process for everybody. And there's no perfect. There's really consistency. I think consistency is the most important thing, especially with kids that have losses like that.
Yeah.
You need to show up, and you need to be willing to say, I'm figuring this out too.
Mhm.
And also honoring the two families, right? That's very important to know that my stepchildren have a different history. And I very, very consciously never wanted to replace someone who I never could replace.
Right.
And I never wanted them to think that I was doing that or wanted, that's not ever has been my intention. I want to be the best stepmom I can be. I will never replace their mother. And that creates, by knowing that, I think some people walk in like, okay, now call me mom. And that's not how it works. They have to sort of come to know you for who you are and not a role you're
I'm a
playing.
huge believer. I was just talking about this last weekend. I'm a huge believer that when you step into someone's life, and I've been married twice before, so I've had this philosophy for a long time. But when I step into someone's life, it's my job just to be loving and kind and allowing the space for those children to accept me as they want.
Mhm.
And as it's their time. I even wrote letters to all of my stepchildren that I told them, I said, look, I'm here at any level that you want and
Mhm.
or need, and not forcing yourself into them. And it sounds like that's what you did, and that's probably why you were so successful, because I don't believe that any relationship should be forced.
No, and you really have to really work hard not to take things personally.
Yeah.
Because, in my experience, loss is enormous. And I don't know what that feels like. So my parents were divorced. I didn't know how my children felt going from two homes. And
Mhm.
so you do have to create a lot of space and let them, come to you, if you will, and just be who you are. Because I think a lot of people do some performative stuff when they think they're, on stage as the new parent.
Yes, I know. And it's the whole proving thing, which I don't look, there's enough of that's gone on in life. It's just that, no, I just be myself and move
Yeah.
on. I know. So let me ask you, what do you love most about what you do in helping people through divorce?
Oh, I love that question. I think I love seeing people reclaim who they are, who they want to be. I think that's the biggest success. I have some, I've seen enough people through this at this point that to see them move from fear into real autonomy again, I think is probably just the most rewarding.
Yeah. I have to agree that empowerment, that transformation, that when they don't feel powerless or they feel powerless and then they're like, oh, you know what? I actually can do this when they get educated and step
Yeah.
into that
Yeah. And
place.
I think across the board, people realize they have strength they didn't know they have.
Mhm.
I remember my dad when I was little, really, I don't know when he told me this, but I love this quote. I think it's his own, but it was bravery is controlled terror. And
Mm.
I've always, that's always stuck with me because I think you do have to be really brave
Mhm.
and you have to figure out how to control it in some way. But it's terrifying, and it requires you to be really brave and face the unknown. I mean,
Yeah.
it's tough.
I
And to see someone successfully do that, they're almost always so much stronger.
Well, I love the fact that you've been doing, and have you been doing divorce coaching most of the 20 years? Or is
No,
it just
no, I mean, unofficially, no.
okay?
I have been doing this for about 3 years. And I love, I mean, a lot of the training has solidified, has helped me understand a lot of different aspects of that. Co-parenting training has been, was fabulous. The course of control training, all of it is just adding sort of to the pieces that I sort of ended up learning, through trial and error in a lot of ways. And then I think once you're divorced, I'm sure you experience this as well. Your friends and family come to you and people send them to you. So I sort of had an informal divorce mom group, and all those things have led me here.
Well, that's awesome. And it sounds like your family is very supportive of what you do as well. It's very rewarding to know that you make a difference in this particular space. Oh, let me put your information on there. If just so you know, everybody, all of your information is down at the bottom if you want to contact. What's the best way for them to contact you, by the way?
If you go to my website, I offer 30-minute consult calls for free. If anybody's interested in sort of learning, about divorce coaching, specifically how whatever situation they're in, how we could work together and who I am. It has to be the right fit. And I also put a lot of content on my Instagram, which is _up_ with Lyerly. I try to do a lot of education, hopefully a little bit of humor every once in a while, and just keep it very real.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you take a consultation for, and I say to anybody, it's like when you're going through a divorce and those little consultations may lead to the best resources that you have, and to be able to see if it's the right fit to work with you. Because if there's any advice I always tell people is get the right team and the right resources, the right people around you, because you don't know what you don't know, right?
You don't know what you don't know. And I love what you have about the legal terms. I offer something similar, which is, the first 10 legal questions or 20, whatever it is, 25 legal questions without legal advice, because
Yes.
you're thrown into this world that you don't know. And why would you know? And it's all new and it's all scary, and your world's falling apart around you, and you're trying to show up for your kids and at work, and you're not sleeping. I mean, it's just, so any information you can get, is power. It really is. And I will say that divorce coaching is relatively new. And I think a lot of people don't know the benefits of it. And it's important to have someone who's there for you personally, who is not telling you what to do, but really trying to help you discover the power within you, and helping you save time, money, and stress by helping you create that team, helping solve these questions. You don't want to pay an attorney $400, $600 to be your therapist or to answer really simple questions. It's a waste of time and money.
Yeah, no, and then people don't realize that too, is that they do turn to a lot of, I was just talking to an attorney the other day, and about that very fact is that and I did it too. I wasted a lot of money.
Yep.
Right. And I went and I would talk I remember the first time I met with an attorney in Hawaii, and he literally just listened to me cry for an hour and a half and then sent me a bill.
It's
I was like,
so insulting. I know.
And I was like, first of all, I didn't hire him because I didn't have the money to hire him. I didn't even have the money to let him hear me cry. But I was like, that was the last time I would let do that. And so it's really important, even if you have an attorney, like there's some stuff that divorce coaches will help you, guide you through that, so that you don't make the same mistakes, or even how to work with your attorney, how to talk to them, because the attorneys are not there to be your therapist. If you want them to, some of them will take your money
for it. They will. Yeah, they will. And look, the right combination of people, we all know what our lanes are. I'm not a therapist. Yeah. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CDFA, but I know I know enough about what you need.
Yeah.
Based on your situation, who you need, and to help you, this is a big one, help you know which questions to ask them.
Exactly.
So it's very targeted, and you're not just going, hey, I need to get divorced, blank. Like, because then you're just sort of sitting there waiting for them to tell you, as opposed to asking,
Exactly. Take the driver's seat, take the wheel back.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that you even said that your ideal client is before they even file, because there's so much work that can be done before you file that will help you navigate a lot better through this process, things to consider. And so I love that you do that for people and get them on the right path before
and we talked a little bit about, if it's high conflict, that can look like, do you have your own money? Do you know your cell phone's not going to get turned off? What passwords? What do you need to prepare? Do you have a safe place to go? Like
bank account?
You say that, it's really important, actually. And that you can start doing, and you want to start doing well before you deliver that message.
Exactly. Yep. And it really is so vitally important, because even with my case as well, it made all the difference of all the prep work that I did. Even though it was still difficult, but high conflict, man, things can change literally in 24 hours or within hours. So, and then
if the pattern is that this person can get you really dysregulated really quickly, it's really hard to make sound decisions. So that's the other piece of understanding how to manage that.
Well, awesome. And if anyone would like to reach out, make sure you reach out to our website. Lyerly, I love what you're doing, and thank you so much for being willing to give back. I have one last question. So here's my little question: is that, what does divorcing strong mean to you?
Divorcing strong. Let's think. I think divorcing strong to me means that you find the well of strength that you didn't know you have. You ground yourself in what's important to you. For me, that was certainly my children and who I wanted to be. I call it my 2.0. I tell my clients that, who's your 2.0? And being able to go on the other side and look back and say, I'm really proud of myself. I had strength that I didn't realize I had, and I'm actually stronger now than I was before. I think that's what it means to me.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, stronger than before, right? I always say, don't ever look back unless you're looking back to see how far you've come.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think oftentimes we get in this routine that we're going to beat ourselves up. Why did we get in this marriage? Why did we stay as long as we did? Why did we, sometimes those kind of things. And I'm like, no. Let's just see how far you've come. And let's create the next great chapter in your life.
Yeah. And you have to believe that that's there. It's seeing it, creating it, thinking about what you want it to be, and then grabbing it. You got to just hold on.
Oh, thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom, your life experience, and good job for 20 years, man. 6 kids and a granddaughter.
Yeah. Fourth one. Yes. This is a grandson
on its way right now. I love it. I love it. Well, thanks so much for being on our show today. And
thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Yes. Make sure you reach out to her because that's awesome, and get her on her calendar for sure. Hold on just one second. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Another episode of Divorcing Strong. I've been Becky Sampson, and today we talked a lot about mediation. We didn't even get into co-parenting. We could have talked about that too, because that's so important as well. But also her experience of blending families, because blending families is a difficult thing on the second go around. When you're trying to heal from something definitely that's high conflict, if that's the case. But make sure you join us on all of the audio platforms. Divorcing Strong is releasing twice a week episodes, as well as on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share. Let's get our subscribers up and also our views. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you on the next episode. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.